Hello, wrestling fans. This is Robert DeFelice with eWrestlingNews. Today I have an exclusive interview with a man who has a wrestling pedigree that most in the industry can only dream of. He is the son of the legendary British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, the nephew of the Hitman Bret Hart, and he is one half of the MLW World Tag Team Champions. Joining me is Davey Boy Smith Jr. Now, Davey, thank you for being here. My first question to you is, with the wrestling landscape being what it is today, why do you think MLW is the best fit for you in America?
Well, yeah, sure. MLW and I, we have a long-term relationship with each other. I first worked there in 2004 with TJ Wilson. We were the Stampede Bulldogs. And when the doors closed on the company back then, unfortunately, Court and I, we stayed on good terms. And we always kept in touch. Then when he reopened the company, we got in touch again, and Court gave me a pretty good lucrative deal, and he had plans on which is now coming forth with his TV deal over in the United Kingdom and over in Ireland, which I think is going to be a huge asset and feather in the cap for MLW. So I was wanting to be a part of MLW's growth, and I wanted to believe, or I would like to believe in MLW, and they like to believe in me as well. So there's a good mutual relationship there. And so far, Court and Conan have been awesome with me. They've given me lots of TV exposure, and I'd like to be a part of MLW's growth for the future.
Well, so far it has worked out great for you on MLW. Of course, you can be seen on MLW Fusion, which is on BN Sports on Saturday nights. You're currently teaming up with Teddy Hart and Brian Pillman Jr. as part of the Hart Foundation. Now, Brian is going to be at All Elite Wrestling's Double or Nothing event as part of the Casino Battle Royale. Is All Elite Wrestling a place that you have an eye on, and are you considering AEW as maybe the next destination for yourself?
It certainly is. I'm not sure what the with the contractual agreements with MLW, if they're willing or open to start any kind of a working relationship with AEW. I'm not quite sure. My big thing is that I'm very, very curious from a lot of different perspectives on how AEW is going to, how this first show is going to go, because, they had their sort of like their first show that they had with Cody Rhodes and Nick Aldis headlining it. But I'm curious to see how it will go, and I'm sure it'll go great, but to what degree and what capacity, and how they're able to follow up with things after this first pay-per-view. So there's just a lot of question marks that I certainly have from not only a wrestler's perspective, but as a business perspective and from a fan's point of view as well. So I'm certainly open to it. And Jim Ross and he's a very good friend of mine, and he's been high on me coming in as well. So I've thought about it, and I'd like to see how things go with the first show. But like I said, MLW, I have a definite loyalty there. First of all, because of the contract and, with the relationship I've had with Court and Conan as well. So I'm curious to see how it will go, and I'm looking forward to it. And I will also be there for the All or Nothing pay-per-view, not necessarily in wrestling on it, but I'll be in Las Vegas there that weekend, and I will be appearing on StarCast, and I'll be there from Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
That's very cool. Now, at StarCast, they will be doing a retrospective panel on Brian Pillman Sr. Will you be taking part in this? I know that your family and Brian Pillman were very close, and given that closeness, I'm sure you'd be a perfect fit for a panel like this.
Absolutely. You know what? I didn't even, I had no idea he was having anything like that during the weekend. And also, I will make one other mention. I will be also competing on the Fight Capital Pro Wrestling show on May the 24th, and that will be on Fremont Street. And myself, Teddy Hart, Nick Gage, a lot of great wrestlers will be on that as well. So if you would like to come and see me in action, I'll be wrestling in that capacity on May 24th for Fight Capital.
Well, I'm sure that's going to be a great show, and I encourage all the fans to check you out there. Now, another name who has recently signed with MLW with links to your past is Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is the current color analyst for MLW, and he also managed your father, the original British Bulldog, in the WWF. Have you had any time to speak to Jim, and has Jim given you any good advice?
You know what? I've had my time spent with him has been a little bit limited, unfortunately, and that's just because of scheduling. I, for one, am a huge fan of Jim Cornette's, and I think that Court Bauer bringing him in was a huge plus for MLW. I think Jim has one of the greatest wrestling minds in pro wrestling business, and I know he's certainly outspoken, but I have to say I agree with him. I would say about 95% of the time on all of his views on wrestling and wrestlers. So, I mean, that's not to say that other people have different opinions, but we all have opinions, and that's mine, and I feel strongly on it. So, the thing is, at the MLW TV tapings, they can be quite long days, like if we're filming like a month's worth of TV and one night. So you may see Jim a little bit beforehand, and then when you want to go and talk to him, I mean, he's just commentated for a month's worth of TV, and he's been running around all day. He doesn't, necessarily, not that he doesn't want to give the advice, he's just really burned out from the evening. So, but I would like to talk to Jim in the future, and certainly get his advice on lots of different things. And I think that he's a big fan of mine, and I really think that he's got a great wrestling mind for the and looking forward to working with him, and hopefully Jim in the coming future in MLW, hopefully he's not just working as a commentator, but also with backstage stuff, because I think that's really where he excels at.
I actually happen to agree with you. Jim Cornette, as controversial as he may be, is one of the best minds in the wrestling industry. Now, I know he's retired as a manager, but is that something you would be into as a one-off, perhaps? Jim Cornette at ringside in the corner of Davey Boy Smith Jr.?
As long as he has a tennis racket.
I would agree, yeah.
Well, you never know. You never know when that can come in handy for a lot of different purposes. But absolutely, yeah. And if it was for a long-term situation, if it fit, I mean, I don't know if I would be the right person for Jim to manage, but if it fit, yeah, for sure. And for a one-off, I would love it. I'd be thrilled. It'd be great.
Let's look ahead to your immediate future in MLW. On June 1st at Fury Road, you're going to be going one-on-one against another man who's signed with All Elite Wrestling, MJF. Now, MJF represents the Dynasty, and you, of course, represent the Hart Foundation. These two factions have been at war for quite some time now. What are you hoping to get out of this match with MJF? Is it going to be a definitive end to this stable war, for lack of better terms, or do you think that there's definitely more to come in the future?
I'm looking forward to it because it will be one of the first times I'll be in singles competition for MLW, if not, I think the first time. So, and, with based on, the momentum that we have going forward in this, I'm going to come at the event with a different attitude. I can be a pretty convivial person, but when someone like MJF insults the family and all the stuff that he's done on the TV, and he got Ted arrested, I can be also quite truculent as well. So I'm not going to hold back on MJF, not taking any prisoners, and I'm looking forward to stretching the hell out of him, to be perfectly honest with you. And I haven't done it for quite a while, but I may bust out a few little surprises. You may even see a moonsault out of me. Who knows? And, I've got a pretty good following out in Milwaukee. One of my good friends lives out there. I've always enjoyed coming out to the great state of Wisconsin as well. So it should be fun, and I'm glad that MLW's ventured out there, instead of just New York or just Miami. I think that there's a good fan base out there that's probably hungry for some good wrestling, for some good TV wrestling. Not just WWE, but an alternative to that. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
It's very interesting to me that you say that this will be your first singles match in MLW history, as you're heavily favored within MLW to be the next major challenger for Tom Lawler's MLW World Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, well, based on I'm actually, so far, I've been undefeated in MLW. That dates back all the way to 2004. So I think one of the reasons why I'm heavily favored for that is because of my win record there, and also because I am a heavyweight, and I also have a mixed martial arts background. Trained under Billy Robinson, Josh Barnett, multiple Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. And I don't know if anybody is listening to this is familiar with the Bloodsport event, but if you aren't, you should check it out on fight.tv. And I had a hell of a match with a young man named Killer Cross. We had a really, really good sort of UWFI shoot style match. And I think that the fans got to see really what I can do in that sort of environment where, I don't have my wings clipped and we can just go out there and get rough with each other. So, and it seems that match is maybe, starting to become a lot more famous. And I think fans want to see more of that style of wrestling. And it's not about coming down to the ring with a towel and spraying your ass with Axe perfume. I like it to be rough and stiff and set the pansies aside and let the real men go in there and battle it out. So, and I think that Tom Lawler, he's under that same attitude that I am. And Tom Lawler's a really tough competitor. We've actually grappled with each other at his gym out in Las Vegas, and he's an excellent wrestler, and he's a great fighter. So I think that if MLW were to have that event, have that match take place in the future, I can guarantee you that we wouldn't disappoint. And I don't think you could find any better action anywhere else, to be honest with you.
Now, I am very curious. There's been a lot of talk lately about wanting to insert more sporting event-like aspects into the world of professional wrestling. You certainly have the pedigree and the legitimacy to pull off something more akin to an MMA fight, and obviously Tom Lawler has that great grappling background that you were discussing. Do you think this match would benefit more from a 2 out of 3 falls matchup, or maybe even something more along the lines of a round system like MMA?
Oh, geez, something that hasn't been done in a long time, and I'm not sure if it would even still work just because of the fans' attention spans these days. Then again, that's because a lot of guys just aren't very good. But is the old British fall style match where you have 2 out of 3 falls, and I think they go for 3-minute rounds. They're three 10-minute rounds. I think it's something like that. But they got rid of it a while ago. But absolutely, and you know what? That brings up a great point, because if it was something like that, or if it was best 2 out of 3 falls, I think that way you really decide and you get to see who the better man is, because, hey, you know what? Sometimes you go out there, you make a little bit of a mistake, you get pinned, or, you sometimes you can get pinned by accident, when you're going for a submission. But to beat a man 2 times in a row or win a best 2 out of 3 falls match, that's how you really decide who's the better man, And
I agree.
I believe on any given day I can when I'm on my game I can beat anybody. So, but that being said, I think that 2 out of 3 falls, or if it was a 5-minute round or a 3-minute round style match, I think that would be great for the fans to see. Hopefully, a breath of fresh air.
I really think that would add an intriguing element to a match between the two of you, and I'm hoping that at some point in a near MLW match, we will get to see this between you and Tom Lawler, whether it be a round system, 2 out of 3 falls, or just straight up man-to-man for the title. Now, you also made headlines this week because you were featured in the Holy Grail documentary on the WWE Network, having to do with your Uncle Bret and his match against Mega Man Tom Mcgee from 1986. One of the prevailing things on the internet after this matchup was simply, wow, Davey Boy's got a great Bret Hart impression. Now, is that something that you picked up from being around him? Is that genetics? What led to you having such a great impression of Bret the Hitman Hart?
Well, that's funny you brought that up. Well, despite the fact that I don't know if you can tell with my voice, I've been getting over a nasty little battle of bronchitis, but usually when I'm not under the weather like this, I can do a lot of impersonations of a lot of different people. And in WWE, I actually became pretty famous for imitating the road agents because, sometimes you have to listen to them talk for quite a while and give you ideas about the match and feedback. And, I always did it in a convivial or joyful, playful way. And so I've had a natural knack, like my Uncle Owen. He used to be able to imitate a lot of people. Actually, my Uncle Owen, he could imitate my grandfather Stu and some of the old wrestlers. He had called up, I think Stu was an old wrestler named Reg Park, and was sort of challenging him on the phone when Stu was about 75 years old. And he got him pretty riled up, and then I think Stu finally figured it out after he hung up. He goes, Hey, damn Owen, you got me. But, I've always had a natural impersonation of Bret. I mean, it's kind of funny because as I'm getting older and listening to myself, I think I'm starting to sound like Bret or Stu myself, which is just not just by accident or by genetics. So it's something that's pretty natural to me. I've also been known to have played a lot of prank calls on people, and I've gotten some promoters in trouble with talent and stuff like that in the past.
Really?
I won't quite get into that. It's too long of an explanation, but at the end of the day, everybody thought it was pretty funny, and they couldn't quite believe that they got fooled. But I would say, I've got a very natural knack for that, and my sister Georgia does too as well. So I'm glad that the world got to see my impersonation there. I've been working on other impersonations and stuff, but I won't put those out publicly or anything until I've really mastered them, if you know what I mean.
Right, I gotcha. Well, you were actually able to see the 1986 matchup between Bret Hart and Tom Mcgee when they interviewed you. Do you think that match holds up to its legendary folklore, or what did you think about the Bret Hart Tom Mcgee matchup? I know that you had said you watched it once, maybe at a barbecue or something when you were growing up. How did you feel about it when you saw it all these years later?
I do. I mean, they interviewed me all through for everything about it. So I'll just, in a short way, I'll explain it. So I had first seen the match in about 96 or 97, and Bret had a barbecue at his house. And, we had just moved back from Florida. I think it was Bret. He had just come back to WWF. And so we were over there, and then everybody was huddled around the TV because he was going to watch this Tom Mcgee match. And I was going to myself, whenever they'd have these get-togethers, Bret might put on some old Stampede stuff with him and Dynamite, or him and Davey from Wembley Stadium, or him and Owen. And as a little kid, I couldn't understand what the big fuss was or what the big deal was about this Tom Mcgee match. So I went downstairs with Dallas, and he showed me something on his skateboard, and then we kind of got bored of that, and then we came back upstairs, and I remembered seeing the finish. It was the drop behind and then with the O'Connor roll, and I had a pretty good memory, and I remembered that throughout all the years, and when I watched it again, that my memory held up pretty clearly. So as far as the match goes, I would say that it still holds up. I think Bret did a pretty good job of leading Tom through, I think a pretty good, decent match. I think that was about not as good as Tom could have done, but, given that he was so green and inexperienced at the time, I think that Bret, what I think sticks out the most is that he didn't make the match super complicated like all the guys. I'm sure that if somebody could see, Tom's athletic ability nowadays, they might put something together that's way too complicated and Tom's going to forget, and then that's going to expose him for how green he is, and people aren't going to remember so much the athletic great things that he did rather than the mistakes that he made. But also Bret also did a good job of not exposing Tom. Like, he could have, if Bret had a chip on his shoulder at the time or was mad about things or wanted to expose Tom, he could have had him hitting the ropes for 3 minutes and blew him up with and totally exposed him and embarrassed him, and I'm sure Vince wouldn't have thought he was the next world champion after that. So Bret was a complete pro in that. And it was funny because he said that was going to be his future world champion, and then it so happened to be that Bret was going to be the world champion in whatever it was, 6 years later, 7 years.
Yeah, I believe it was Cassius Ohno who said Vince was looking at his next world champion. He was just looking at the wrong guy. Yeah,
that's pretty accurate way of putting it. But I'm kind of curious. It's also another hidden match, but I know that Bret and Tom had another match 2 years later, and I think the shoe was on the other foot, and Tom was supposed to be the heel in it, and I don't think the match was anywhere near as good, but I'm just curious on how that turned out. That match I haven't seen, and I don't know who would have that, but
maybe that's another mystery for the archivists to uncover.
Yeah, I think it's better that the fans saw Tom in his best moments in the 86 one. So,
while we're on the topic of your Uncle Bret, I did want to ask you about the man that attacked your uncle while he was accepting his second WWE Hall of Fame induction alongside your cousin Natalia. What did you think at that time? I know you had spoken about this briefly, that you were able to catch up to the guy. But what was going through your head at that very moment?
Well, that's one of those weird situations. So I was sitting far away, kind of near where the entrance was, like right where the guys, come out and walk down to the ring. And then when I initially had seen it, I thought maybe it was like some kind of work, because I never know what WWE has up their sleeve or up in their pocket for. Like, for all I know, it could have been Enzo that ran to the ring and Bret puts him in the sharpshooter or something like that. Who knows? I don't know. So it became pretty clear and evident. Like, I'm not sure what made me decide that, or know right away that it was a shoot. I think it was when Shane jumped in there and then I saw Travis Brown, and then I ran to the ring and I did my best to punch the guy. He was all curled up like a pansy, covering his head up in his face. He should have just taken it. But he's an idiot. But he's being dragged off, and he's just a complete moron. Like, I'm not sure what he was trying to prove, jumping, a 60-year-old man that's, been a stroke victim and a cancer survivor, and Bret's got 2 replaced knees. Like, obviously the kid's got problems. I watched some of his YouTube videos before they got taken down. And he's got issues, so I think jail would be a good place for him. I hope he goes there. Jail's a pretty nasty place. Not that I know anything from experience, but I have friends that have spent time there, and it's not a fun place. And he's hopefully he does some time in there. That's all I can say about that. And,
Well,
so luckily, thank God though, for Bret and Natty that they were okay. But, that just goes to show you that, luckily the kid was a real idiot, but luckily he didn't have an X-Acto knife or a knife or even a pencil to stab Bret with or something. Obviously if he was that nuts to jump the ring like that, he'd be that nuts to do something else. But I think he thought that he was going to make himself famous, but he's just an idiot, and hopefully he enjoys some jail time, and he can, color in his coloring book and think of new ways to take over the world or whatever wackos like him do in jail. So, he can sit in there and cool off a bit and make some friends.
Well, your Uncle Bret certainly kept his composure and was very cool throughout the entire situation, so kudos to him, and we're all very happy that nothing serious happened to him. But while we're on the topic of the Hall of Fame, for a long time now there have been online petitions and fan requests and even videos from Hall of Famers trying to get your father, the British Bulldog, into the WWE Hall of Fame. You worked there for a few years. Did you ever fully inquire or try to figure out why your father was never inducted into the Hall of Fame, or what is keeping them from doing that as soon as possible?
Well, honestly, I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. And I can speak on Owen Hart's behalf too. I don't know why he hasn't. Everybody wants to blame Martha for the reason why he's not inducted, but I ran into Martha not long ago, and we didn't speak about the Hall of Fame or anything, but I guess I can assure you that I don't think Martha would even. She may try to contest him going to the Hall of Fame, but WWE, they're a very powerful company and they can do whatever they want pretty much. So, and if they've made a DVD about Owen Hart and actually made money off it, which Martha tried to contest, but, I'm sure she made something off it too, and they still made it. So if they're going to induct him in the Hall of Fame, which they're not going to make nearly as much money from, I don't think, as far as his DVD, it's all really up to the pencil and eraser that's up top there, and whether that's Triple H or Vince McMahon himself. But there's definitely a lot of question marks. Like, I don't know why Jim Neidhart wasn't inducted while he was still alive. And, it's just, and why Davey wasn't inducted, or, who knows? I mean, Vince may just wake up tomorrow and say he wants to induct Davey in the Hall of Fame this upcoming year, or he may want to do it in 5 years. There's nothing really that makes sense as far as that goes. Like, there's a lot of guys, like, even, is Terry Taylor still in WWE as a producer?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I'll just use him for example. Like, why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? He's Hunter's buddy. He's in the company. He was a good wrestler. So, I mean, it's just, there's just, he's still active. So, I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't induct him. So I'm just using him as an example. So there's not like, oh, I'm going to induct Davey this year, or I'm going to induct, the British Bulldogs, and I have the plan of doing it in 2022. This is the year. I think Vince just decides things sometimes spur of the moment, and that's the way that it's going to be. So when Davey will be inducted, I have no idea. He certainly more than deservingly should be inducted, but like I said, I don't know. I don't have the pencil eraser there. I don't know what it's based on, because it doesn't. There's no real rhyme or reason behind some of their choosings, I suppose I could say. So I don't really have a distinct answer for you there, but I'm sure someday they will. When? I don't know.
I certainly hope that happens soon. As you said, your father is more than deserving, and your Uncle Owen even is certainly more than deserving, and I hope that whatever forces are keeping him out can one day move aside so that he can take his rightful place into the Hall of Fame. Now, I understand that you're a busy man, and before I let you go, I want to thank you for your time and just ask if you have anything to say to the legions of fans that have watched you and your family throughout the years. I myself have always been a huge Hart fan, and this has meant a lot to me, and the impact that your family has had has been very special to me, and I know that there are many fans around the world that feel that way. So what would you like to say to them?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you to, the fans that were listening. Hopefully I didn't babble on for too long. If they would like to follow my career, they can follow me at Twitter at DBSmithJr. And they can follow me on Instagram at DBSmithJr. as well. I will be at StarCast, like I said, next Saturday and next Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I've been getting pretty flashy with my new outfits, my silver and gold British Bulldog outfits. So I will be wearing them, and hopefully the fans of Las Vegas or anyone that traveled abroad can come and see me live and in person. I'd like to start taking after guys like Classy Freddie Blassie and some of their fashion picks and apparels. And it's been really fun. It's been, it's great for me to make up these new outfits and design them. Certainly you could be doing a lot worse things on your spare time. So, but hopefully I can inspire people with my wrestling, but not only that, but with my new wardrobe. And hopefully fans can come and see me and they can get pictures. And I am trying to get a hold of a bulldog to bring so the fans can go and meet Matilda's granddaughter.
I think the idea of getting a picture with Matilda's granddaughter would be one of the funnest things to do at an event like StarCast, especially with all of that 80s nostalgia around. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time again. This was a pleasure for me, and I'm certainly looking forward to following your career in MLW. And maybe the next time we're talking, I'll be talking to the new MLW World Heavyweight Champion, Davey Boy Smith Jr. Thank you again, and thank you to those that have been listening. This, once again, was an eWrestlingNews exclusive.